Unleash Your Wealth. I'm Casey Elkins, co-founder and managing partner of Elevated Financial Management. I'm here this morning with Mark Stimson, my friend, father-in-law, and business partner. How you doing, Mark?
I'm doing really good. I'm so excited to be with you today, Casey, and I know there's some angst out there in the world, and I want to help our viewers today really think positively about what we're going to talk about today. I think we're going to be able to share some things with you because I know people are anxious about maybe what's happening to your 401k. I think you're worried about what's happening just in the world in general. And there's even been talk lately about government default. And so these are all things that are weighing heavily on everybody's minds. And I think after today, we're going to talk about the importance of having a plan, because if you have a plan, Casey, as you know, we talk about this every week on our radio show and our TV show, you're going to be able to weather the storms that everybody's going through right now.
Yeah, there's so much going on out there. And like you said, so many things that we just haven't faced before, right? Yep. And retirement is something that most people haven't dealt with before, right? Usually it's a one-time thing. And so that being the case, we just want to talk about what's going on, what's on people's minds. And, you know, something that I see quite a bit of when folks come into the office and they sit down, they start telling us about kind of where they're at in their retirement journey, is that they're mostly worried about market volatility. Yeah. And I think that's something that we can all understand, something that everybody's dealing with, whether you're approaching retirement or not. And so that being said, I want to share maybe a couple of stories here, because I think it's important that we take the right approach when it comes to market investments, right? So there's a couple folks that come to mind in regards to market volatility. One in specific was an individual that we met with, and as we were going through things, I'm looking at his investments, and I realized that he's very, very conservative. As a matter of fact, he's invested in just a money market account and is earning maybe about 1 to 1.5% on an annual basis. And so I asked him the question, why is it that you're invested that way? And he said, well, I actually moved to that position when Trump was elected. And now, mind you, this is 4, 5, 6 years after Trump was in office. And so that being the case, he sat out of that entire run-up in the market because he was nervous, because he was concerned. And that really just illustrates the point that there's so much to be worried about. But we also have the other side of that coin, where we don't want to have everything invested in stocks. We don't want to be so aggressive like we're investing like we're 40 years old and we've got 20, 25 years before retirement, right? So there's a trade-off, and that's something that I think is so important. And really a second set of eyes is what helps people understand, is what I'm doing appropriate? And as a matter of fact, when's the last time you looked at your portfolio? Most folks haven't looked at it for years. They just kind of put it on autopilot and it just sits there, right? Yeah. And so we see that all the time. So that's something that I see quite a bit of. What about you, Mark, when you're meeting with folks? What do you hear?
Well, I think right now, probably one of the hottest buttons for anybody that's coming in and sitting down with me is taxes. They are so concerned when we look at the national debt, and we do workshops on a regular basis, and Casey handles the section on taxes. But one of the things that we emphasize over and over again is the need for a plan. Right now, Roth conversions is something you're hearing a lot about. But we emphasize too that everyone's situation is unique to them. A Roth conversion may not make sense for you. Then again, it could make a lot of sense. So we don't know until we have the facts. And both of us are certified financial fiduciaries. And so once we sit down with you and we begin to look at where you're at, where your assets are at, Casey just mentioned how much risk you might be taking. We're going to take a deep dive into your tax situation. We believe, I know I do, because I did tax returns up until a few years ago, but I don't do them anymore, but we do the tax planning for that. And planning, the two biggest eroders of your money in retirement is going to be taxes and inflation. And are both of those a worry for you right now? I know it is for me, so I can just imagine what it's like for you right now. So I think that's something that we highlight, and we put a lot of time and effort into working on a plan that's going to address taxes and inflation.
Yeah, that really is important. And I think you hit the nail on the head. We have to have a plan, not just a portfolio, right? And we see that a lot. Folks have a portfolio, and that's great. That's a great start. But we've got to have a plan to really help us understand where we're going in retirement and what that's going to look like. So, Mark, you know, for our viewers at home, we have something special that we want to offer them. But before we talk about that, maybe you could share a little bit about what folks can expect when they come into the office. What's that experience like? Because it's an unknown, right? We're walking into a new situation. What does that feel like for them?
Yeah, I just want our viewers to know what you're seeing up here is the way it'll be when you come in our office. We are very laid back in that regard. We want you to keep your checkbook at home. You're not going to have to worry about, oh, what's this going to cost me? We want you to come in and just have a conversation. So if you've saved at least $250,000 or more, you maybe have worked at Boeing for decades or Weyerhaeuser, we want you to come in and have a conversation with us. That's all it's going to be. We are going to then be able to develop a written plan that's done by a certified financial planner. So please pick up your phone. The number is 844-342-7142. That's 844-342-7142. Come on in and let us take a deep dive into your personal situation.
Thanks for sharing that, Mark. And as Mark mentioned, there's so much going on. There's so many things to be worried about when it comes to retirement. And undoubtedly, if you're listening to our show, that probably represents you as well. And so many of our clients come to us with concerns, not knowing what to think about the things they hear on TV and everything that's going on, and they just want some confidence as to how they can handle the situation and move into retirement and live the retirement that they want to live. And so that being said, that's why we have this offer for all of you that are listening. Please don't hesitate to pick up the phone. It's very easy. It's no obligation. We will sit down and create a written retirement plan just for you with a certified financial planner and show you what that roadmap for the future looks like. So pick up the phone, 844-342-7142. Don't go away. We've got a lot more to talk about. We're going to talk more about taxes and some other things that are going to affect your retirement. Don't change the channel. We'll be right back on Elevate Your Wealth. Call 844-342-7142 right now for your own written financial plan. Having a clear path to retirement is more than just your savings. This review will include a complete risk analysis on your portfolio, a deep dive fee X-ray to determine how much you are and could be paying on those investments, a tax reduction report, and healthcare and legacy planning for you and your estate. To begin your retirement readiness review, call Casey, Mark, and the team at 844-342-7142 or use the QR code to schedule your appointment right away. Whether your retirement is coming soon or you want to be certain you can stay retired, the written financial plan will help guide you through your retirement planning journey. Call Mark Casey and the team at 844-342-7142 or use the QR code to schedule your meeting today. Hello and welcome back to Elevate Your Wealth. Again, we're talking about taxes, things that are going to affect retirees more than possibly the rest of the country as well. So lots of things that we want to discuss today, but let's bring it back to taxes. Mark, when it comes to taxes, I think it's something that maybe we hear from clients quite a bit. They don't realize that they have a silent partner in their 401k. Can you share a little bit about that?
Yeah, this is something that's pretty common. And you don't. I always liken, I use the illustration that with a 401k, you have, as Casey mentioned, a silent partner. And who's that partner? Well, we know that's the IRS, right? So you need to understand that probably only about 80%, 75 to 80% of your 401k belongs to you. The rest is going to be paid, as we know, to Uncle Sam. So planning how to take distributions and when to take distributions from your 401k is critical. So we're of the belief right now that why not pay tax at the lowest rate that you're probably ever going to see in your lifetime. We know the debt is skyrocketing. We're pushing $32 trillion. And with that type of debt, taxes can only go one way, right, Casey?
That's
They've
right.
got to go up. And so if that's the case, we might want to deal with taxes now. The hard part is getting us as taxpayers to want to pay the tax now. We've been in such a deferral mode for years and years, decades. It's hard to face that music. We want to kick the can down the road, but if we do that, it's probably going to cost us a lot more money, and that's why planning is so critical. You need a written plan to address how and when you're going to deal with your personal tax situation.
I think that's it. That's the key, right? It's your personal tax situation. It is unique. And so for each individual person, your situation uniquely affects you, and the way that you're set up is different than somebody else. So what could potentially help one person does not necessarily help another, right? And so that being said, you mentioned that many people are in a tax deferral mode, right? Yeah. So they're thinking of, if we think of when we're driving in a car, they're thinking of taxes in the rearview mirror. They're looking behind them, always looking to lessen their taxes for the previous year, right? And that's okay. When you're working, when you're building assets, that could be appropriate. But when it comes to true tax planning, we have to be forward thinking. Right. So again, if we use our car analogy, we're looking through the front windshield, right? We're looking as to what's coming towards us. And as we move into retirement, potentially a 20, 25, 30-year endeavor, taxes over that time frame can be a big deal. Yeah. And you mentioned, as we said, the silent partner. And maybe one way that we could illustrate that for the folks at home is if we think about a mortgage, right? Let's say that you were going to go buy a home right now. You go to the bank to get your mortgage. You found this house that you love. They say, no problem. We're going to approve you for the loan. But we don't know what the interest rate is right now. We're not quite sure what the interest rate is at this point. But we'll tell you what, we're going to give you that loan. And at the end of 30 years, we'll let you know what the interest rate is. Yeah. And then you can pay all of that back to us at the end of 30 years. How many people would take that deal? That doesn't sound real appealing, right? And unknowingly, that's what so many have done with their 401k. They've been pushing it off, not realizing that the tax rates can go up in the future, will likely go up in the future. So what the tax rate was when they started paying into their 401k is likely going to be less, or at the minimum different, than what it will be when they start taking the money out. And so it's really important that we have a true plan that really addresses taxes, helps us understand what that looks like in the future. Now there's a couple of things, and you mentioned it a little bit earlier, when it comes to Roth accounts, right? Yep. That's going to be a tax-free type investment. Yep. Mark, maybe you can just share a little bit about a Roth, what the benefits are, and then maybe how somebody can go about actually setting that up.
Yeah, in fact, we talk a lot about the different buckets, we call it, of money that you can have in dealing with your own personal retirement. We've got taxable, we have tax deferred, which is our 401k plans, our 403bs, our 457s, and then the bucket that I love and really talk a lot about, and that's a tax-free bucket. And there's only a couple of ways to get tax-free retirement income. That's going to be your Roth, which hopefully many of you have, or it's going to be life insurance that's designed the right way to be used as a retirement vehicle, not just for a death benefit. But the beauty of tax-free is exactly what it says. Uncle Sam is not a mortgage holder to those dollars like they are in your tax-deferred bucket. So when we talk about a Roth conversion then, a lot of people when they retire, they feel they're going to be in a lower tax bracket. Now, that may be the case, as Casey just mentioned, but a lot of times it's not. And so, again, figuring out and having a plan to possibly pay taxes at the lowest rate possible, that's why we're of the belief right now, we're having a lot of our clients pay tax now and save their Social Security, not turn that on early, which we'll talk about that in another segment here. But the point is, you need to have a plan, and it may make tremendous tax planning sense to go ahead and face the music now and pay tax at a lower rate than you're ever going to have to pay.
Right, and that really highlights, and we talk about this a lot, the pain of discipline or the pain of regret, right? Ultimately, when it comes to this type of thing, we're going to have one of those. And that being the circumstance, it makes more sense most of the time to have the pain of discipline when we're thinking of taxes and dealing with that now versus 10, 15 years from now and having the pain of regret. So something to consider, definitely worth looking at on an individual basis as to what somebody's situation is, right? There's also a few other things when it comes to taxes. We've been talking about tax deferred accounts, so 401ks, IRAs, 403bs, those type of accounts. But what about a taxable account where somebody has investments, maybe they've got stocks, and we think of the step up in cost basis. Yeah, so there was a lot of proposed changes to that. We understand that there could be some adjustments. Maybe you can share with the audience a little bit about what those proposals look like.
In fact, this is probably one of the biggest concerns that I have as a tax planner is that if we were ever to lose the step up in basis, whether it be for real estate or stocks that you've owned, that really is going to devastate not just wealthy Americans. That's going to hit everyone, middle income, lower income, and let me explain cost basis just a little bit. That's where if you inherit a stock from mom, let's say, or dad, and you inherit that stock at $100 a share, and they paid $20 a share, that means there's $80 worth of growth, right? Well, when you get that stock from your parents, you don't owe any tax because you get it at the $100 value. If they take away the step up in basis, that's going to mean all of that growth is now going to be taxable to you. And that is going to be devastating to ones that don't have a plan. And so we hope that it doesn't pass, right? But last year it came within one vote of some major changes, and one of them was a big change to what we know as a step up in cost basis.
Yeah, it's definitely something that we've got to have a plan for. And folks, you'll know that if you listen to our show, that's a great deal of what we talk about is having a plan. And that's applicable in all aspects of life, but especially when it comes to finances, when it comes to your retirement, we want to make sure that we have something solid that we can count on, and also something that has contingencies so we can adjust as the landscape around us changes. So because of that, we have a special offer for you today. Mark is going to share that with you. Mark, can you tell a little bit about what folks can expect if they give us a call?
Yeah, for our next 10 callers, and the number you're going to call is 844-342-7142. But what we're going to do is we're going to design a written plan that's done by a certified financial planner. And inside that plan, we're going to look at any fees you may be paying on your portfolio. We want to look at that very closely. We're also going to look at maybe your tax situation. We're going to address that. We're also going to be looking at your income sources. Are they guaranteed? See, in retirement, one of the biggest things we harp on all the time is your income needs to be guaranteed. It's guaranteed or it's not. We're going to look at that in depth for you. And also we're going to look at any legacy planning that you want to do and maybe passing assets on to your children or to a charity. So please pick up the phone, 844-342-7142, and leave your checkbook at home and just come in and see us, and let's have a conversation about your specific situation.
Thank you, Mark. We're focusing on retirement as we always do, talking about the things that are going to hit you the hardest in retirement. We want you to be prepared. Don't change the channel. We're going to talk more about taxes and risk in retirement.
Call 844-342-7142 now to receive your complimentary tax map with your written financial plan. Learn multiple strategies that can protect you from higher taxes now and in the future. Taxes are a threat to your financial stability in retirement. Protect yourself from the potential threat of rising taxes. As a retirement planning financial advisory firm, Casey, Mark, and the team will help you navigate the financial waters to pursue your retirement goals. Call 844-342-7142 today. Casey, Mark, and the team offer inclusive retirement services, such as investment directives for your portfolio, income-producing strategies, and wealth preservation plans for your family and legacy. Call Mark Casey and the team at 844-342-7142 right now for your complimentary tax map with your written financial plan. Discover tax strategies to keep more of what you have saved in retirement, or use the QR code below to schedule today.
Hello and welcome back to Elevate Your Wealth. Again, I'm Casey Elkins, here with my business partner and my father-in-law, Mark Stimson. Mark, we're talking about lots of different things today. We've been talking about different risks that retirees face. Let's talk a little bit about how just things have changed. When we think about our parents' retirements, our grandparents' retirements, they had something that many folks no longer have, and that was a
pension. And so Casey's mentioned something that's it's just been a monumental shift for those of us in the United States. Only roughly now about 13% of Americans are going to be fortunate enough to have a pension. I have a lot of Boeing clients. Casey does too. That pension was voted out probably 7, 8 years ago now. They regret that. Well, why is that? Because in retirement, it's all about a guaranteed income stream, right? And if you are fortunate enough to have a pension and Social Security, that could be a pretty decent retirement. You know you have an income to count on. The wife is going to be very happy about that, right? She knows she can pay the bills that are going to be due each and every month. And we talk tremendously about that subject because a lot of us now are not going to have a pension. We're going to have to create our own. In fact, we call that, why do you think companies have gotten rid of a pension, right? They don't want to be the fiduciary and they don't want to be on the hook for that money for decades. Yeah. And it could be 20, 30 years, right? So they went from what a pension was known as a defined benefit plan to a defined contribution plan. Casey and I talk about that. So all the responsibility now has shifted from the company to who? To you and I, right? And because of that, we call that the yo-yo plan. It's you're on your own. Yep. And if you're not, you might say, up to speed and understanding all the things about your own money, how it should be invested, it can be devastating, especially when we look at what's happening right now. And you mentioned all the volatility. It's eating up a lot of 401k money right now.
It is, yeah, it really is. And I think it's important to note too that, we teach retirement workshops, I think, as you mentioned, at local colleges, different museums in the area. And we talk about these type of things with the classroom. And at one of our workshops last year, a lady came up to us and she said, well, I really appreciated what you had to say. You were talking about the 401k and how there's not as many investments inside of a 401k as there is potentially inside of an IRA. And she mentioned that she's the plan administrator for her company and that she did not even understand what the options were inside of the 401k. You remember that?
Yeah, and I mean, think about what Casey just said, if you're listening. This is a plan administrator that's responsible basically for upwards of millions and millions of people's hard-earned money. And if she doesn't know the options that are available, how are you supposed to know, especially if you're not what we call in this industry a really sophisticated do-it-yourselfer? And it's something that we're concerned very, very much about because so many people you guys work a lifetime to build up this pension. All we do is have to look back to Detroit and what happened to the hardworking auto workers and their pension's gone. Now, a pension has to stay funded. We all know that, right? But again, if it's thrown upon us to be responsible for it, you need to have a plan because if you don't, it can backfire on you and it can erode something you've worked your whole life for. And all of a sudden, that wonderful retirement that you had planned for turns out to be more of a fairy tale than it does reality.
That's right. And with the 401k, and there's nothing wrong with 401ks, but something that we see is a lot of times folks are contributing to a 401k and they don't understand how it's invested. They don't truly know what their options are. Yep. And one of the things we see quite a bit is a target date fund. And so oftentimes folks will kind of put the money into the target date fund. I want to retire when I'm 65, that's in 2025 or 2030, so I'll use that retirement target date fund. And with that, it's supposed to become more conservative over time, almost kind of like a set it and forget it, right? But we know that bonds have struggled recently, and the way that they create the conservative nature of a target date fund is with bonds. They adjust the mix of stocks versus bonds. And so that being the case, the target date fund maybe is not operating quite like we thought it would. And so again, that's where a plan comes in. That's where a true analysis starts to understand where you're at and where you'd like to be. So it's important for folks to understand that. Now, when we think about risk, there's a lot of things that can bring risk to us in retirement. And so we want to be ready for different things, have a second set of eyes to help us kind of understand what those options are. But I guess the question is this: when it comes to our investments, Mark, in the market, however we're set up inside of our portfolio, what is the right amount of risk?
Yeah, see, and before the standard thinking, or what was known as modern portfolio theory, was basically 60-40. 60% equities or stocks and 40% bonds. Well, right now, we're not believing in the bond market whatsoever. In fact, that's a problem. And this year is unique because there's nowhere to run. Bonds were falling at the same time as stocks. And so that's created an unprecedented challenge for everyone that's watching this show or listening to our radio show, because what do I do? And the average person doesn't know what to do. We have to really think about it as planners. I've been doing this close to 40 years, and sometimes I have to really dig deep to understand what is an asset class that's going to be successful for my clients. It's not easy. It's like roulette, black or red on the roulette table, right, in Vegas. So a plan's going to help us to figure some of this stuff out and allow us to again, we care tremendously about helping our clients with downside risk, worrying about helping them protect what they built up. We want them to make money too. We got to worry about inflation, but we don't want them to lose a big chunk of their money when they get into what we call the retirement red zone, within 5 years before they retire or within 5 years after, because their money can evaporate and they won't have the retirement that they had dreamed about having.
Yep, you're right, and that's where the plan comes in, right? And you mentioned that we want to take the right amount of risk. That's different for each person. It's not static. It's not the same from individual to individual. And what one person is okay with as far as their investments go, another person may very well not be. And even if they are okay with it, it may still not be an appropriate investment. So something to consider. And along with that, we offer for all the folks that watch the show, we have a special offer for our first 10 callers. Mark, would you share more about that?
Yeah, so please, Casey mentioned the first 10 callers, we'd like you to pick up your phone, get off the couch, and let's have a conversation about your specific situation. Casey and I will be just like what you're seeing on the screen today. We want you to come in, and we're going to provide a written retirement plan that's done by a certified financial planner, and it's going to address taxes, inflation, investment risk, income, and also legacy planning. So please pick up your phone, call 844-342-7142. And again, come on in and leave the checkbook at home, because we want you to get a plan, because we know that's what you deserve.
As Mark mentioned, this is for our first 10 callers, 844-342-7142. Please take advantage of this. We just want to help. We'll offer that for each of you. We look forward to having you come into the office, meeting you face to face. We'll be right back here, same time next week. We look forward to seeing you again on Elevate Your Wealth.